Okay, Carol, are you back?
I'm calling Nene here. I sent them another invite.
Do you want to go ahead to the next screen? And are we ready to get started with Marta? Is she ready? I think so. All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad to see you all on the call. And I see a lot of familiar faces and some new folks and some friends out there. So I'm really happy to have you all here. I am Carrie Ritzler from the 100% Athens Renewable Energy Initiative. And Carol, if you can go to the next slide. So we've got all our speakers here. 100% Athens is a community-led group advocating for a just and equitable transition to clean and renewable energy for all of Athens. Speaking today for us are steering committee co-chairs Carol Myers, who's also running the slides, Nene Onyoha Clayton, and Dan Everett. We're also joined today by Mike Wharton, who is ACC's interim sustainability officer. The Sustainability Office is directing the process to plan for 100% clean and renewable energy. Let's see, Carol, we've lost the slides.
Carol, you're muted.
Carrie?
Yes.
When I'm viewing when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the waiting room.
I've got it. I'm letting people in. It's popping up.
Okay, great.
Dan just joined us, and I'm sure Nene is coming. Hi, Shane. We got some people coming on that I know.
Next slide.
Well, yeah, not quite. So we have Mike Wharton from the ACC Sustainability Office. The Sustainability Office is directing the process to plan for the 100% clean and renewable energy transition. We also have with us Bailey Shea from the South Face Institute in Atlanta. South Face is working with Athens Clarke County Unified Government to lead community and stakeholder engagement and development of a 100% clean and renewable plan for ACC. South Face has many years experience in the energy policy and planning space. They developed at Atlanta's 100% plan, and they're working with a number of other cities with 100% commitments in the region. We also have Matt Cox from GreenLink Analytics. They're working with South Face and ACC to provide models and tools to help us develop our plan. GreenLink is an Atlanta-based energy research and advisory organization equipped with sophisticated analytical technologies and deep industry knowledge in the clean energy space. And they've had accolades from MIT, Georgia Tech, the National Science Foundation, among others. They use these technologies to help create a smarter, cleaner, and more equitable future. We're super glad to have them here with us. Finally, we have invited Athens District 9 Commissioner Ovita Thornton to join us to speak a little bit about what the 100% transition means for the community. Next slide. 100% Athens believes that equity and justice are vital in the transition to clean and renewable energy, and we want to make sure that Athens residents are able to have a voice throughout the planning process. That starts with this webinar, so please use the chat box to submit your ideas, questions, and comments. Right now, we'd love to know what you see as strengths in your neighborhood or community and what needs you have noticed. So if you want to go to the chat, you can type strengths and tell us some strengths in your neighborhood, type needs and tell us some needs, just informally to let us know. We'll also have polls throughout the presentation, so please take a minute to fill those out. And if you have a question during the webinar, please put it in the, submit them here or in our Facebook page, or email us, and we'll make sure to get back in touch with you. Next slide, please, Carol. So I want to introduce you really quickly to 100% Athens. We've been engaging with the community around the idea of a just and equitable transition since 2018. We've had town halls, community events, discussions, and forums. We have engaged with state policymakers to advocate for just energy policies. And we've also engaged with local officials and city staff to advance policies like the 100% clean energy resolution and the $15.8 million renewable energy SPLOST project. These position Athens as a leader in addressing environmental justice and climate change in a manner that prioritizes the needs of those who are most vulnerable to high energy bills, negative health impacts, and economic loss as climate change alters our environment. As part of this transition, we advocate for the creation of a new green economy to support green energy and take advantage of the economic benefits of this growing sector. Finally, we are seeking to create multiple ongoing opportunities for you, the residents of Athens, to engage with the planning process to make this a plan that truly represents 100% of Athens. You guys are essential to this process. And as our motto states, we can't be 100% without you, so welcome. I'm gonna, Carol, if you'll go down, yeah, that one, great. Our plan today is to review the ACC Clean Energy Resolution and the SPLOST 2020 program. Then we'll discuss what we mean by equitable transition, why it's important, and how Athens can make it happen. So I'm going to turn this over now to Carol to tell you about the resolution and the SPLOST proposal.
Okay, Carrie, first I'm going to make this so we can see the whole screen again. And Carrie, would you check the waiting room? I believe Nene and perhaps some other people are there.
I think I've got everyone in, but I'll check.
Okay, I just had a message.
Okay.
All right, right now we're gonna practice out there with you with a little polling. And I'm gonna ask you all, again, remember we are novices at this, to see if you all can do this poll. That asks, when did ACC pass its 100% clean and renewable energy resolution? And there are a couple of answers there that you can choose from. And then how much money was included in SPLOST 2020 for the resolution? Okay, good. This is good practice for us. We're starting to see some answers. How many people do we have participating, Carrie?
I haven't stopped to count.
Okay.
I think we have, I don't know, and I still have people texting me. As usual, there was technical difficulties.
Carol, we have 27 participants.
Oh,
Awesome.
Great, thank you, Dan. Dan, and if someone could check the chat box to see if we actually are live on Facebook. I can't
work on that, Carol, while you.
What?
Go.
Okay, so what we're seeing here is, well, we're going to end this poll now so we can continue. That was fun. The answer to the first question is May 21st, 2019. And the answer to the second question, which was actually in Carrie's introduction, was $15.8 million. Oh, I am now sharing the results. So we are learning a lot as we do this presentation. Okay, I'm going to go on then. Well, and just thank everyone again for being here. So that was a year ago on May 21st that the commission voted unanimously to pass Athens 100% clean and renewable energy resolution. This resolution commits the unified government of Athens, Clarke County to obtain 100% of its energy needs from clean and renewable energy sources. Energy sources produced on or for unified government properties by 2035, and it will decrease the use of RECs, third-party renewable energy certificates, to not more than 40% of its total energy portfolio by 2050. It also commits the larger Athens community to get 100% of its electricity needs from clean and renewable sources by 2035, and then all its other energy needs from green sources by 2050. To implement this, the local government will create policies and programs and lead a comprehensive effort to support this community's transition. In addition, there are also 3 other important parts to the resolution. First, the resolution directly states that during this transition we will, and I am quoting, work in a manner to redress historical inequities in our community by prioritizing resources to train and hire people from within marginalized communities to participate in the energy efficiency and renewable energy workforce, and by facilitating energy efficiency upgrades, opportunities for clean transportation and renewable energy installations in low-income communities. Second, the second important part is that the resolution commits the government to create a clean energy plan. This is something that Bailey Shea from Southface will be talking about later in the presentation. Southface is the same sustainability consulting firm that's worked with Atlanta on its clean energy plan. And third, in the resolution, it urges the Athens Clarke County Pension and Deferred Compensation Boards to divest from investments from fossil fuels and increase investments in renewable and sustainable energy sources. You can find the complete resolution by doing a Google search for Athens 100% renewable resolution, and it'll come right up. What makes our community's resolution different than those of other cities, and there are between 100 and 200 other cities, I believe, I'd have to look on the Sierra Club's page, that have made this commitment. What makes our commitment different is that during the same time we were working with the commission to develop the 100% resolution, we were working hard on getting 100% clean and renewable energy project passed as part of SPLOST 2020. Thus, when we all voted on SPLOST last November, we approved $15.8 million for projects that help us make the transition to green energy. That means that a year from now, when Athens Clean Energy Plan is passed, there will be a big bucket of money that we can use to start funding projects identified in our energy plan. Okay. What impact will this have on ACC government energy use? Each of these circles represents all the energy that the government presently uses. The pie chart on the left shows how far we've already gotten with sustainability efforts up until now. To date, we've offset 9.7% of government energy use with all its past sustainability and renewable energy efforts. That's the yellow sliver. Our Office of Sustainability has done a fantastic job with the funding it's received, but it can only do so much with limited funds. The blue sliver shows the amount of percentage of energy from Georgia Power that comes from renewable as 2.5%. Let me also say that since these charts were made, it's been estimated that Georgia Power's use of renewables is now closer to 6% if hydropower is included. But of course, that means that the other 94% of power from Georgia Power comes from non-renewable fossil fuel energy sources that contribute to climate change and air and water pollution. The right pie chart shows the government's projected energy use after the SPLOST 2020 funds are spent. At that point, in about 11 years, another 15% of government energy use would be from renewables, natural resources like the sun and wind that are constantly replenished and from energy saved through energy efficiency and conservation measures. Now let me turn you back to Carrie.
Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so when we start to think about this massive transition from currently using mostly dirty and unhealthy fossil fuels to using 100% clean and renewable fuels to power our lives, it's essential that we take the need for equity into account. And the great thing about this transition is that if it's done with
Yeah, go on.
equity and justice as priorities, we can solve multiple problems at once. So right now, Athens has 31.6% poverty rate, and above average energy burden, which we're going to discuss later, 10.6 unemployment, and disproportionality if you look across many different equity measures. So you can go to the next slide. So an equitable transition will center and prioritize marginalized and vulnerable populations and ensure that the transition benefits marginalized communities. Nene, Matt, and Dan I'm gonna turn over to them, and they are going to talk about the harmful effects of our current energy system, how we can change it, and what benefits we might see from that change.
Hi, so thanks, Carrie. My name is Matt Cox. We'll be talking a little bit about our options here and what some of our first steps are expected to be. So at a beginning point here, we're going to be looking at options that we can take that are both cost effective and improve equity across the board. So we're starting with options as a part of the municipal operation. Those have actually been ongoing for the pretty close to since the resolution itself was passed. In that case, the work with the government has benchmarked all of the city's facilities. So we've been able to track the energy consumption over time and get that on a regular reporting cycle so that we can see how things are trending. Energy audits have been incorporated and completed such that we're now able to identify a number of energy efficiency and energy conservation measures in a host of buildings that will make an improvement in both the environmental and the economic performance of those facilities. And we've taken a look at solar rooftop potentials across the municipal government's own operation. So we've taken a look at the bill data that we collected as a part of the benchmarking and the audit side, compared that to what the costs of solar would be and what the cost of staying on the existing grid supply would be, and have produced these estimates of savings that are now being incorporated into part of the overall government plan. Second stage here is to take a look at the savings that are available for the community. So to do that, we've developed some machine learning algorithms that evaluate, sorry, I'm still on the first one.
Okay.
That evaluate the energy efficiency and the solar opportunity across the entire city and the county, it's both. So we've used satellite and LiDAR data to try to figure out which rooftops are good candidates. We've done a pretty detailed analysis of what the existing building stock looks like and what opportunities are there, and are looking at policies that might be adopted to make sure that those opportunities are taken advantage of. Another benefit that can come from that is the ability to identify ways to improve equitable outcomes. So we can identify which parts of Athens, Clark County are currently struggling with energy burdens, and the whole next slide is about that. So when we touch there, we'll go more into that. And then the last one is to try to keep more money local. Use this as an economic development tool at the same time that we are addressing the inequities and the environmental problems that currently exist. Okay, now I'm ready. So what this slide is showing you is the energy burden that you see across Clark County itself. So energy burden is the percent of your income that you spend on your energy bills. What we have identified in doing a look at all of the neighborhoods across the entirety of the state of Georgia is that the two highest energy burden neighborhoods are in Athens itself. And you clearly see this divide as you're looking at the map on the left. These are the electricity bills broken out by census tract against their income. So you can see right down the middle, that's where you've got the largest disparity relative to the rest of the county. And that's also relative to the rest of the state. So the little bar chart on that slide is showing that the average resident in Athens is paying a little over 6% of their income towards their electricity bill, which under the conventional definition qualifies as actually in energy burden. You are more than twice what the national average is. And you can see that that's also higher than the average in Georgia by a fair amount, 40% higher than the average for Georgia. The other pieces that we have on this particular slide are looking at co-indicators along with energy burden. So where is asthma the worst in the across this geography, and where do we have SNAP recipients, just to kind of show how these issues layer up on each other. So you can see that you actually have a lot of that stuff is coincident with one another. These are communities that are going to be struggling not only with their energy bills, but also with higher rates of disease, and also looking, in this case, to be SNAP recipients as well. The next slide, I think, will be my last one.
We're working on that. Oh, sorry. There we go.
There we go. Our analysis of the current position for Athens versus what it could be shows that the business as usual trend is actually about as bad a choice as we could choose to make. We miss out on all of our opportunities here to create jobs locally, to reduce the energy burdens in the areas that are most disproportionately affected by that. And so the snapshot here, we just put this in financial terms, but there's a ton of different ways that you can slice and dice this. Today we're looking at Athens basically sending close to $450 million a year out of Athens to pay for energy. And that number is expected to grow to just under $600 million a year by 2035. That could be reduced. I mean, the more that we do energy efficiency in the community, the more that we do solar within the community, those are going to keep those dollars local. Those are investments that you can't send somewhere else. And they're going to lead to job creation. And at the same time, they're going to reduce the energy bills that we're currently paying. I just saw a poll pop up here. Submit. So yeah, overall, what we're seeing in our models is that we're able to now project what the impacts of different portfolios around energy efficiency and solar look like across the entire community. And so these are the numbers that are coming out of our models. We're looking at an opportunity to save $9 to $12 per dollar that we invest in pursuit of this 100% clean energy goal. That's a combination of direct energy bill savings and public health benefits that will come back to the community in the form of reduced emissions. The net return on that investment, depending on how aggressive we are in pursuing it, is somewhere between $1 and $5 billion between today and 2035. And to just put that into context, to kind of give a little bit of what the split is between the public health and the energy bill savings, you see most of it is energy bill savings, but the public health benefits are still not anything to sneeze at. That's about $300 million on the top end of our estimate, which would average out at about $150 per resident in Athens per year.
Okay.
Now I'll pass on to Nanette.
Thank you, Matt. Hello, everyone. Speaking of public health and disproportionately affected populations, as Matt mentioned, I would like to focus on some of the largest health and economic impacts of climate change on our primary target communities of Black and Latinx residents in Athens. On the left-hand side, you will see bullet points of health impacts, and we're just focusing on some major ones. The first one are urban planning health hazards. For instance, the heat island effects increases air pollution levels and demand for air conditioning due to the increased warming experienced from climate change of global temperatures. This is also linked to increased asthma rates. Now, let's go back a little bit, and I'll give you an overview of why this is. Black and Latinx communities generally experience negative health outcomes linked to where they have been historically forced to live in this country. They are more exposed to environmental health risks due to increased air pollution, both indoor and outdoor, reduced water cleanliness, reduced quality and safety of housing, including increased exposure to mold and cold and lack of insulation, proper insulation, and lack of affordable and reliable public transportation and access to those. So if we look at how global warming affects these inequities in these populations, you have your heat island effect, you have your increased asthma due to more pollutant exposures. And we have some figures there of the asthma rates amongst children. Now, African American children have the highest rates of asthma of all measured demographics as of 2018 figures, followed by Puerto Rican, and then white, and then Asian children. White and Asian children have some of the lowest rates. Similarly, cardiovascular disease rates are highest in African American communities. These have been linked to the environment in which they live and exposure to air pollution and other pollutants, other environmental pollutants, which will be exacerbated by climate change. Some of the major economic impacts of climate change on these frontline communities are increases in energy insecurity. This is on the right-hand side. There is a greater vulnerability to increases in utility costs and associated fees, married to higher air conditioning and heating demands, and also higher fuel costs lead to fuel poverty because of the lack of affordability. Climate change will also increase food insecurity, as these populations are more vulnerable to rises in food price increases due to climate change. There is an increase in housing insecurity, which will worsen persisting historical and systemic inequities that reduce economic opportunity and social mobility linked to home ownership and home ownership status. Then fossil fuel recession related unemployment. Now, oil price shocks actually produce roughly twice as much unemployment in African American communities than in white communities. And as these market volatilities increase, they also have a negative economic impact on our frontline communities. So let's look at a way of offsetting these negative economic impacts. Could we go to the next slide, please, Carol? Thank you. So here we are. I will now talk about the Green Jobs Pipeline, which is a local green jobs initiative that we are just starting out to build. And this is to create new jobs in the green economy for Athenians. Could we go to the next slide, please? Carol, thanks. So what is the Green Jobs Pipeline? Well, the Green Jobs Pipeline is a community-led pathway to renewable energy careers supported by policies, programs, and education. It ensures a just and fair access to renewable energy economy, and it centers the needs of marginalized communities. So through this community green jobs initiative, we aim to secure green jobs trainings and opportunities for an equitable percentage of members from our target communities, as I've already indicated, Black and Latinx members of our community. We will also aim for investment of resources in the creation of minority-owned and run renewable energy businesses. Our first goal is to secure and maintain a proportionally just and fair representation of workers, owners from our target communities in all areas of the emerging green economy, including solar energy, wind energy, weatherization, energy efficiency upgrades, insulation, management, training, instruction, and supporting administrative roles. Our other first goal is to ensure that these jobs are union grade with fair wages with benefits. And our third first goal is to establish and secure policy, education, labor, and community support for this program so that it is sustainable in the long term. Could we go to the next slide, please, Carol? Thank you. So this is a diagrammatic scheme of the Green Jobs Pipeline. It shows the key actors and partners in the community that we intend to work with and we are starting to work with. From policy actors right through to social services via education and employment. Our key partners within each sector of the pipeline will be aligned to work towards common equitable goals using a shared agenda, facilitating and maintaining employment opportunities for our target communities. They will stay in regular communication and perform mutually reinforcing activities, all initially coordinated by 100% Athens and community partners. And this will take the form of worker development projects, as well as community education projects, as well as social green policy advocacy projects. Now, this particular scheme is how we intend to bring green jobs opportunities to our community. Thank you, and I believe this is time we popped up a poll. If we don't have a poll question here, that's fine. I will hand it over to Dan, who will talk about our solutions that we are exploring and the business case for them. Oh, here we go. Please answer this question, a simple question if you can. How interested are you in learning more about green careers for yourself or for our community? And this is just a preliminary poll. We will be sending out other testing polls to see who would be interested in learning more in workshops and meetings and town halls and so on.
So I think we're moving to Dan now.
Thank you.
Okay, Dan's going to talk about what's going to happen in this transition, what it might actually look like. And I'll leave this poll up a little bit to let y'all keep answering. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And as we've mentioned, the detailed plan for taking Athens to 100% renewable energy is very much a work in progress, which is why we're asking for your input. But this is just a list of some of the tools that we will probably end up using for this job. So the first thing we might think about when we talk about 100% renewable energy is, yeah, we should put up a whole bunch of solar panels. And yes, in fact, we are going to put up a whole bunch of solar panels, but that's not all. It's equally important for us to make our buildings more energy efficient. Upgrading these older homes, as we've mentioned before, as Matt and Nene have mentioned, is going to keep that energy bills in Clark County, and it's going to increase the healthiness of those buildings. And it's just going to be a more pleasant place to live. If you do own a home and you have the opportunity to put solar panels on it, that's a really great idea and it's a really good investment. But it doesn't work for everybody. Some people's houses are too shady. Some people can't afford the solar panels, and a lot of Athenians rent. So we may be able to get around this drawback by building these community solar farms, as you see in the picture here. These are organizations, operations in which a whole bunch of neighborhoods kind of share the ownership of a whole collection of solar panels. And then as we get more and more of this inexpensive renewable energy, and as for our electricity, we want to convert as much of the energy that we actually use to electric use. There's things like polluting diesel buses, gas stoves that aren't very good for your air quality. A lot of these things can be reduced by cheaper and healthier electrical equipment. And we'll be doing that kind of over time. So as equipment becomes obsolete, we'll be able to invest in new, cleaner, and cheaper electrical equipment. And finally, we're not initially going to be able to generate all of the energy for Clark County inside the boundaries of Clark County. And that's where we're going to have to use some of these things called renewable energy credits that you've heard called RECs. So what these RECs are, they're certificates that tell us that a unit of solar power or wind power has been generated someplace else. Right? And over time, we hope to transition to having more and more of our energy be homegrown energy generated right here in Athens. So that's my talk. I'll hand it over to who's next, Carrie?
Yeah, I think it's back.
This is my other talk. Yeah, my other talk. So
yeah, you have another slide, Dan.
all right, my other slide. So you may be asking, well, how are we going to pay for all this? But that's the wrong question, because these expenses are really investments. The estimate of the return on our investments are $15.8 million investments for the SPLOST project. This is estimated to return a 7.2% annually return per year. And that's a really good number. If we're making some kind of long-term financial investment, such as a college fund for our children, we would be pretty happy to get a sustained tax-free 7% return on that investment. So the real question is, what are the investments that will lower our carbon footprint, increase our social equity, keep our money on this community, and yield a good rate of return? And I call this the 7% solution. Most of these investments will not come directly from the city government. These are private investments that would give a good rate of return, but they're not being made for one reason or another. For example, some energy efficiency investments do not happen because the homeowner doesn't realize how profitable they would be, or the homeowner can't get the financing, or it's a rental unit where the owner doesn't pay the electric bill. So the challenge we'll have is to find ways that the city government can use its governmental power to make these good investments more attractive. We might use things like green municipal bonds, loan guarantees, ordinances, or some of the other tools available to our government. And all of these projects will feed into the green jobs pipeline. So we'll have more jobs for our young people. And now it's time for me to turn over to the next speaker.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Dan and Nene and Matt. And I'm also seeing good discussion and questions over in the chat, so keep it up. I think we're going to have a good amount of time to address some of those after the presentation. I am really happy now to be able to introduce Commissioner Ovita Thornton. Ovita has been wonderfully supportive of this goal from the very first time we spoke to her about it while she was still campaigning. And I think there's really no better person to talk to us all about how we can start to use this 100% transition as an opportunity to increase our capacity to take care of one another in an uncertain future. So Ovita, it's all you.
Oh, me. Well, first of all, I'm going to apologize for my voice. I think some of that Sahara dust got in my throat a little bit, but I'll do the best that I can to tell you how happy I am to be a part of this. Actually, before I knew anything about 100% renewable energy, I didn't even know anything out there existed. I know I wanted to do more. I knew there were things wrong, and especially in minority communities. But I had no solutions, no answers. So being educated prior to me being elected was huge. Then to be a part of the commission that unanimously agreed to do a resolution that is historic for me. So it's almost like taking an idea and then moving it to action. And now we're getting ready to move it to a real action plan. I see the support and the opportunity almost immediately. Now, this is Ovita talking, not the whole commission and not anyone else working on the downtown development. But I see the opportunity with the downtown development, mainly with Bethel Homes and the neighborhoods surrounding Bethel Homes, as being a good opportunity to put this into place. We cannot just be about ideas. We have to be about taking those ideas into action. So I think the work that you guys have done has prepared us for action. I've talked to Carol and Carrie several times about ideas and thoughts and things. I also see a possibility down the road of educating developers. There's this tug of war between developers and the community a lot of times. We in the commission have endorsed 100% renewable energy. We should make that our talking points for any developers that want to develop in this community. This should be a priority. I know we can't discriminate, but we should let potential developers know that this is something that we are concerned about, that we support. And not only that we support it, we can send you to the folk that are working on it. So you can put that in your development plans. I am getting educated every day. I serve on a board in Keysville, Georgia, and the heating and air system is geothermal. I didn't even realize what geothermal was, and I didn't even realize how important it is. And to tell the truth, we let it get away from us. But we did that back in the, prior to me becoming on the board, we did that back in the 90s. And here we are, 2020, talking about geothermal solar. I want to not think it robbery to mention a name that some of you who are working on this, please remember or find out more about a gentleman. His name was Keith Johnson. Keith Johnson was talking about this in the 90s in Athens. And I think we all thought Keith was crazy. And he's deceased now. But when we move forward, we got to remember these visionaries and these prophets that saw where we are now. Keith Johnson was on the forefront of this discussion, and he was on the forefront in the Black community because he knew this would have a major impact. I support and commit to this. The more I learn, the easier it is for me to support it. Jobs, clean air, affordable utility bills. Those are all the things that I'm committed to for the population of folk that I represent. So I don't know what else we can do. I think that the fact that I don't even know how long y'all been working on this, but I know it wasn't overnight, and I know it didn't just happen. But that SPLOS designation, I think we've moved some huge barriers, and we need to collectively continue to move forward. The communities, and I'm not being discriminatory at all, but the communities that I am very concerned about will benefit the most. And we've got some educating to do. We're very traditional people. We're very, this is the way it's always been, and we manage, but we've got to work together to help people appreciate the benefits that 100% renewable will do. So if I have to close with anything, this is a community effort. I love the opportunity of looking at our new downtown North Athens development. We want to remember folk like Reverend Keith Johnson, and we want to build jobs. We want to have clean air, and it's just not solar, y'all. That's what I'm finding out. This whole 100% renewable energy is just not solar. And if I can grasp it at my age and at my experience, anybody should be able to grasp it. Okay, we're not doing this for my generation of folk entirely, which it will benefit. But for the young folk, we need to be having these curriculums in our schools. I hope that we would have a conversation with our school board. What are we teaching our kids? You know, we can teach history all day, and it's true. But what are we teaching about the future? What jobs are we trying to create? I'm totally on board, 100%. I think you have all the rights and responsibility to hold this government feet to the fire. We get so busy. We get so busy with so many issues. If you don't remind us every now and then to make us stay on track, it's not because it's unintentional that we may get lost in some of the, with everything going on. We need you there to say, hey, don't forget about, and these are some ideas. So I'm excited to even be a part of the conversation, and somebody remembered that I was interested, uneducated before my election, but I'm getting educated, and I'm definitely on board. And I understand my colleague, Patrick Davenport, is on here, and I know he feels the same way that I do, that this is the direction we need to be going in on a lot of issues. So thank you for allowing me to be a part today.
Thank you so much, Ovita. And I did want to recognize and thank Patrick Davenport for coming on today also, and for his support all along. And I love the idea Ovita brought up, that it's time to turn our ideas into action. And I think that's a really great way to think about where we are right now. And it leads right into the next and final part of our presentation, which is community action steps. We are going to now talk about when will planning begin. And I'll say it's starting right now because we're getting so much great discussion and feedback and ideas from the chat. But I'll turn it over to Mike and Bailey from South Face. And when they finish, then we'll have a few minutes for questions. So Mike, you can take it away from here.
All right, thank you. My name is Mike Wharton. I'm with the Sustainability Office. First, let me thank you. Much has been covered already, so I want to keep my part of this really brief. Thank you all for joining us on this webinar. I know there are a lot of things you could be doing on a sunny summer Sunday. Try to say that fast 3 times. And we appreciate you making time for this webinar and being here with us. The 100% resolution that Carol Myers spoke about earlier was a key milestone for Athens, Clarke County. If you've not had a chance to read the resolution, I really encourage you to do so. Part of that resolution called for the development of a clean energy plan for our community, and the Mayor and Commission charged our office, the Sustainability Office, with developing that plan to provide a roadmap for making Athens, Clarke County a cleaner, healthier community. The process for developing this plan required inclusive, extensive, and sustained community participation. We need everybody involved. That's what's going to make this very successful. Thus, through your participation and that of all those who will contribute to the process in the future, it's both essential and it's greatly appreciated. Thank you for helping us make our community a cleaner, greener, and healthier place to live. And thank you all for participating. As part of this process, Athens Clarke County has engaged the South Face Institute and Green Links. These organizations bring both experience and impressive portfolio in their areas. The goal of this process is to have an inclusive and achievable clean energy plan to present to the Mayor and Commission within the next approximately 14 months. To make this happen, there's a great deal of work that needs to be done, and we appreciate your willingness to work on this toward this goal. So I can't encourage you enough to stay involved, get involved, and pull other people into the process with us. At this point, let me introduce Bailey Shea, who's with South Face Institute, so she can explain more about the process that will be used in developing this clean energy plan. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Mike. My name is Bailey Shea. I'm really excited to be here. I work at South Face Institute. Before coming to South Face about 2.5 years ago, I went to UGA and I lived in Athens for 5-ish years. My parents still live in Watkinsville and I have plenty of friends in the community. So I'm really, really excited to be part of this community effort. So like Mike said, I wanted to give, well, first I'll give a plug to a shout out to Megan O'Neill, who's on the call here as well. She's part of our Athens Clarke County team for South Face, and we have a couple other team members who are not able to join us today, and they send their apologies, but yeah. So like Mike said, I wanted to kind of give everybody an overview of our planning process and just give a sense of the large scope of this work. Like he said, there's about 14 months that we're looking at before publication next year. And things are constantly in flux because of the global pandemic and, you know, and everything else that our communities are dealing with right now. So to give you a sense of where we're at, we're currently in an education stage and we're wrapping that up right now. So we can't hold large in-person meetings for community and stakeholders currently, but we wanted to be able to set a good foundation for when and if we're able to. So we really focused on breaking down how Athens got to the resolution, why we're planning for this 100% effort, and how we're going to potentially get there. So the first thing that we did was actually GreenLink developed Athenia model for Athens advanced clean energy scenarios and look at energy burden in the community that Matt talked about earlier. So that was a big part of our kind of education phase. We also developed a website. So with Athens Office of Sustainability, we've been working to develop a ton of content to go onto the Athens website. So that is accgov.com/100. And not everything is up there yet, but it will be soon. There's also a stay connected link in there for everyone to stay connected into the project and get regular updates. We're also working on mailers so that we can get, you know, paper flyers out to everyone. So real old school stuff and radio PSAs as well. So starting in July, just around the corner, we'll be starting our engagement strategy. And this is something that we're currently working with the Office of Sustainability to kind of reshape because of the situation we're in with COVID-19. Ideally, we wanted to have 5 community conversations, at least 2 public engagement events like farmers market tabling and things, and surveying both in person and digital. So we're currently working on reshaping that a bit to fit the needs of the community during this pandemic. And we have a poll on that. I don't know exactly when we planned on doing that, Carrie. We can save it to the end of the slide. Or maybe, Carol, we'll save it. So another, oh, there we go.
I got it. Thanks for the reminder, Bailey.
No worries. So this is just to get a sense of comfort levels. And it's, you know, I think there's going to be plenty to learn from you all, but in terms of comfort and plenty of, working with office sustainability to figure out what we can do, but wanted to put this up there.
And there are 4 questions. I don't know how it looks on y'all's side, but just if you scroll down, and this will be extremely helpful.
Yeah.
To knowing when to start planning. So we'd appreciate y'all's feedback here. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Carrie,
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Did you launch the poll, Carrie?
I did, yes.
Okay.
It looks like it's up. So we've planned for about 9 months of community engagement. To us, that's the most, with our experience with Atlanta and otherwise, to us, that's the most important part, is to get the feedback, the desires, the concerns of the community heard before we, once we start writing and planning what policies and what programs we can really implement. Another part of engagement will be a citizens advisory board, which I'll speak about on the next slide. That's a board that's appointed by the mayor, but it's in no way, I want to emphasize that it's in no way meant to supplant the community's feedback as a whole. It's more to supplement. So next, we will work on writing the plan and then publication. And that's an effort that the Citizen Advisory Board will be engaged in, and publication we expect to happen around fall of next year. Next on this timeline, I have written down here policy development and action. To me, I really wanted to emphasize here that South Face's contracted role and same with Green Links ends next year once we've published the plan. But we don't want that to be the end of this effort, right? We never want this to be a plan that sits on shelves. We want the community to be continued to engage, and we know that based off the participation in this Sunday afternoon webinar, based off the tenacity with which this community called for a resolution and for the SPLOST dollars, we know that you guys are going to be committed to continue to, like Ovita said, watching the commission and helping them, drive these policy developments forward, as well as action and implementation of the plan and whatever programs may come out of this plan. If you go to the next slide. So this is a view of the Citizen Advisory Board. So this is a board that's been appointed by the mayor, and the intent is to represent its constituents and the Athens community in an advisory role to the Office of Sustainability, to Greenlink and South Face as we help the office write its plan. As you can see, 100% Athens is a Citizen Advisory Board member and will be doing things like this to be an ambassador for the community itself into the plan. They'll be having monthly public meetings, which can be viewed on Athens website. Starting the public one, I believe, will be in August. And this is, like I said, not to supplant the community's feedback, but to be a supplement and a conduit. And with that, I think I'll turn it back over to Carrie.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to wrap up very quickly so we can get to questions. I did want to recognize that several of the the Citizen Advisory Board members did come on the call today, and we really appreciate that. That y'all took time out again to be here and be part of the conversation. These are our ways you can stay in touch with 100% Athens. We are endeavoring to keep the community informed every step of the way, because we feel very strongly about seeing this project through that we started a few years ago with a few meetings at a coffee shop, and we're just so thrilled to see where it is now. We'll share this on our website and on our Facebook page, so you can catch it there. And I think we're definitely ready to move on to questions and discussion.
And Carrie, I'm going to take it off of the presentation share so we can all see each other.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I appreciate everyone's interaction on the polls. I think we've gotten some really good feedback there. And I just wanted to summarize what I've seen. We started off talking about strengths and needs, and some of our strengths that were noted were you know, being close to grocery stores and having services nearby on the east side. An engaged, people who are very engaged, as we can see by everybody on here, which is going to make this, the more engagement we have from the public, the more equitable I think we can come out with a plan. So that's great. Some of the needs that were noted were food security, affordable housing, jobs, job training, knowledge and access to everyone, for everyone, and aging housing. We also had some questions about solar and what happens in neighborhoods that aren't optimal for solar, and some questions about electric vehicles. So did anyone else see anything that I missed? Or if you have other questions to throw up, let's go ahead and throw those up.
Or you can also, if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask a question live, old-fashioned way, that's good too.
You know, this is Ovita, and I just want to, again, I appreciate the extent that you have reached out to diversify this conversation. But I would like to also suggest if we could make a special outreach to some young folk, some of our high school folk, to get some input. And I'm thinking, for example, Katie Johnson's leadership program at Cedar Shoals. But I think one of the things we need to start doing is including our young people on the front end of these discussions and involving them, because at the end of the day, our decisions and our work is going to most impact them than us. So we need to make some special efforts. I know you made some special efforts to reach out to the African American community, and I definitely appreciate that. I would like for us to take that same energy to include our young people on the front end of these discussions.
I think that's a really good thing to bring up, especially looking at the timeline here. You know, we're talking about the end of this transition in 30 years. And so the people who are young now are going to be the ones who are running this community in 30 years when we achieve this transition. So I think that's a great thing to bring up.
Can I also jump in and just say that briefly, that on the education end, we have people who are with Athens Technical College and people like that who we will reach the youth through their programs as well. So.
And I wanted to reach out too. I just put a comment in the, what are these comments over here, saying if you have the name of any group or people in the community who we could make a similar presentation to, please put it in. If you want to help do that, if you want to make changes to like this presentation that we put together in the last couple of weeks and, you know, are learning how to do different things with, creative ideas are welcome. And I think reaching out, you know, taking one step at a time in different directions. So please add ideas here.
Just to say, I think this is probably implicit in the program, but this program is a wonderful opportunity for university, college level students to really acquire hands-on apprenticeship experience in how you put a program like this together. And obviously it could involve many, many different disciplines. And maybe this is something that you're already thinking about, planning on, but it just seems to me that this is a tremendous learning opportunity for many people in our huge university population.
So Bruce, are you suggesting that we could, in a sense, mentor people who want to make a similar presentation, and then they get the experience of putting the whole thing together and getting different people involved.
No, actually, it's a little bit of a different approach. We have students in environmental sciences, in engineering, in economics. This program touches literally on just about, on public health. This program touches literally on just about every academic discipline that you can imagine. And I know it might take a little bit of structuring, but I hope that there can be a way found that students in some of these disciplines can see the impact on public health issues, can participate in some meaningful way, can see the opportunities to install renewable energy resources and identify and participate in some meaningful way. Again, this is certainly not an area of expertise for me, but it does. This is the experience that Athens is having, that Atlanta has having. This is not old hat. This is not something that people have been doing for 75 years or 50 years. There's a newness to it. So undergraduate students are not going to have professors who have already had key roles in this kind of experience in the community. And I don't want to go on and on about this, but it just seems to me there may be opportunities here to make this a real part of the educational experience of people in the college and university communities.
I think that's a great point, Bruce.
I just want to ditto Mr. Minky's comment, because he's right. This is not a 50-year-old concept. This is really new for a lot of us. And the area, and I was thinking high school more so because I know some leadership programs, but a really, really good department that we need to reach out to on this education is the College of Environmental Design. They are doing a lot with developing and infrastructure. They do not they may have this information, but the areas that they cover in that one school, this fits so good. I don't think nobody's thought about that. And the person that would be a contact there would be Jennifer Lewis. But I do agree with Mr. Minky. This is bigger than what I think any of us had imagined being on this call.
I had a question. Oh, go ahead. You about to respond to that, Ms. Myers?
No, I'm just like writing her name in the comments. Actually, I was going to ask people to get more voices of people who are quiet. So, Broderick, that's great that you're asking something here. Go for it.
Yeah, I just noticed that when we put together these type of programs and initiatives, a lot of times the people that end up getting the good paying jobs with benefits on the other side of this usually doesn't look like the people that we start talking about in the front end of the conversation. Mm-hmm. This, webinar even itself has a title of equity on it. But a lot of times what we miss is like the actual plan for putting equity in place. We'll call on the different stakeholders to come to the table. But then, we start talking about UGA, Environmental College of Design, and I, worked with the different professors in that college before. There's not a diverse program from the last I've seen. So when are we gonna, also thinking about just the Chamber of Commerce and who gets paid to staff the Chamber of Commerce, United Way of Northeast Georgia, I'm on their board now. Their staff, who gets paid, it's not minority people. Same thing with Creature Conference, a lot of the big industries we have it locally. They don't have a lot of minority employees, but some of those companies provide good jobs with good benefits for people. So my, space in this, or part of this conversation, is making sure we have a plan on how to get good jobs to people in Bethel Homes, in Rolling Ridge, in LEB, and training them in proper ways so that they're taking advantage of this industry. And we're not just creating another round of jobs for people who don't look like, people that I come in contact with on a daily basis. So having more concrete infrastructure on what that actually looks like. Yes, we've called some partners to the table, but when are we going to start laying out the concrete plan alongside of developing the 100% renewable energy in Athens? When are we going to start developing that infrastructure to put those people in those positions?
I want to address that. If you know, I don't want this to be my conversation and take over. That's our job, Broderick. Those missing people who are not around the table, that's our job. Whoever's not sitting around the table, we got to make sure that they're there. I think that, for example, I think Shane Blackwell is on this call. He has a network that Carol may not have. You have a network that Carrie may not have. We've got to make sure that those folk who have traditionally not been around the table, we create space for them. I can't expect nobody else to create a space for folk they may or may not know. So we got a responsibility, and I'm so excited that you brought that up, because that's what usually does happen, is that a few folk take that leadership role, and most of us don't even know that train is going down the track. So we have a role too, if we're talking about equity. And I want to say this, and I'll be real clear about this. We've got to step up and speak up and not allow everybody else to do that for us. And therefore, while we're on this call, whoever's on this call, if there's a group of people that need to be a part of this, they may not have known about this webinar tonight today. They may not know about 100% renewable energy. They may not understand how this affects the people of color community. That's our job, that we've got to get out here and take the responsibility and make sure that we get the word out to anybody and everybody who has not been traditionally around this table.
May I just offer one other thought to you, Carrie, Carol, the leadership, Ovita. I hope that you will be careful to document crucial aspects and developments of this entire program. That in itself, I think, can be a major learning tool for other communities that might consider this kind of a program, to see what Athens has been able to do and to accomplish. And sometimes after the pieces are in place, people begin to say, gee, if only we had a little bit of visual documentation and auditory documentation of landmark events for a documentary. It doesn't have to be a world class, but something that can be useful when other communities in Georgia consider, what can we do? How can we do it? Can we do it? So I'd just like to plant that thought with you to consider.
Thanks, Bruce. I wanted to make sure that we got a question from Patrick answered. Patrick asked if for some clarification on the 6% on the green link numbers. He asked if the correct number was spending more than 6% of annual income on energy would be considered energy burdened, and the answer is yes. Over 6% is burdened or stressed, and over 10% is considered energy poverty. And Patrick, I just wanted to check and see if you had any other questions about that while we have Matt here.
Yeah, I don't know of anybody who's paying less than 20% of energy needs annually. So I just find that number a little low, but it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I believe
I can give a little
Go ahead.
Context on that. So national for electric and gas is between 3 and 4% each year. And depending on the state of the economy, it moves a bit around and how rates are moving. But that's typical. What we saw in Athens, as I mentioned, was the highest level of energy burden that we have in the state. So it is a significant issue locally where we definitely see that value being higher. 6% is 2 standard deviations away from that 3% average, which is why it was selected in the academic research as a convention that everyone's kind of selected now. Because that means like that's essentially the marker for this is statistically significant and a more dire situation. So and we're looking at the average case in Athens being over that 6% value. So yeah, it's certainly a stress situation.
Thank you.
I want to follow up. Actually, I'm writing Broderick something, but I'd like to say it out loud here, is that I'd really want to follow up with the point that Broderick made. During my time at Athens Tech, where I spent my career, there were a lot of new programs that came into being that got a lot of publicity and that school liked to brag about. What I noticed, and anyone who was looking noticed, that they were not necessarily programs that were helping the people in Athens who were working low-income jobs that didn't get them anywhere. And I would really like to figure out, like, brainstorm creative ways of getting that like information about jobs. And what's different for me about the green pipelines is that it doesn't exist. We're not talking about like we're going to get more people on the right path right to the job as a surgical technologist at the hospital. So here the training and the jobs are sort of coming into being at the same time. And for me, thinking about it conceptually is a little challenge. And there might be opportunities, I would think, for entrepreneurship there as well. But that's something I would definitely like to see, because we need to be doing a better job of that. Anyway, so Broderick, let's follow up on that.
If I could just say a few things. First, let me introduce myself. Name's Enrique Reyna. I'm a director of organizing for the IUPAT. Hi, Nene. Thanks for the invite, and happy Sunday to all. Well, I represent a district council of allied trades, which is a labor union in the construction industry and also private and public sector. And I just want to add, the conversation is right on point with a need to hold those that do come in and these companies that are going to be doing the good jobs, whether it be a private entity, whether it be a company that is willing to do this work, right? There has to be standards, right, for local hire, and there is language that we've used in other states and other cities. I'm originally from San Diego. I've done work in the East Coast as well. But these standards are there for a reason. Because for the same statement that Broderick brought was that we get a lot of publicity. We create these good jobs. We have the pipeline, but there's no real language that holds the contractors accountable. Once it gets to the general contracting arena, they sub out, and there's really no oversight. They're awarded a bid, and they go back to business as usual. The face that they give the community when they're passing the projects is exactly what we want to hear, and their intention's probably there. But when they have no oversight in a private arena, there is no accountability to make sure and mandate that those jobs do become local. And there is language that exists. I'm familiar with a lot of it, and I've had this discussion with some of the people in the chat room, so that those dollars do come back to those targeted communities. And I think having those discussions now is the right place where we should be, to make sure when it comes out on the back end for the people that we're really trying to bring to the table, that it be very clear to those making those substantial profits. It's okay that they do that, but these jobs need to be good jobs that are uplifting our communities, and it needs to be a circular relationship and very open and transparent. So I'm happy to be here, and I hope to help out as much as possible.
I had a quick question for you, Enrique, if you have time. I don't want to commandeer the conversation either, but it sounds like you have a lot of knowledge and experience in the area where I was looking to do some research, and me and Nene spoke about this as well. Is some of the individuals that I come in contact with in the community have like background, nonviolent felonies, right? So as I understand it, in some cases, you cannot work on certain construction companies or sites if it's publicly funded. I haven't looked into this personally myself, but it's some of the things that I kind of want to learn more about and trying to figure out how to work with people that have those type of barriers. I know at the local labor department, they have a program where people can become bonded, right? Where they will go through the labor department. The labor department will provide insurance covered for the company that hires people with a background that is in the situation. So are you familiar with that type of language as well when you're trying to thinking about developing these type of pipeline for jobs?
Yeah, so I've never seen that direct issue put in to address that direct issue of just felony or just if that's a specific group we're talking about, but the vehicle is the same, right? We need to be able to put policies and language in the correct arena for these general contractors, so that in this case it would be like a local hire, and as far as a law across the board, in my experience, there is none. We represent workers in power plants. We represent workers in nuclear facilities, coal. So a big bulk of our membership now are government jobs. And some of them do have that, but it's not, I've never seen it enforced directly the same across the board. So I think we're kind of delving into an arena where I don't have the complete expertise on what would be okay to promote as a worker, right? But you do need to have the vehicle that they have that local hire. Like in this case, I view it as the green jobs pipeline. And there, you can have those discussion at the real ground level when those jobs are kicking off. And that's where you can make real change, right? You'll see the transaction between those that are gaining off of all this work and the SPLOS and the change that we're trying to implement, but you see it actually happen locally. But I'd love to have more discussions with you on a sidebar if you'd like, but yeah, it's definitely, it can happen for sure.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for answering that. Yeah, I'll try to put my contact information in your chat box.
I really appreciate the discussion that we're having. We did say we would wrap up at 5:15, and I was glad to go a little bit longer to hear all of this. And I hope that this is part of, this was our intention, is to start the conversation, and it will not be finished today. And I'm hoping, I'm really hopeful hearing that Broderick and Enrique are talking about continuing to talk through what exact kind of policies need to be put in place, because I think that's where we are, and those kinds of things are what we need to be considering to put into the plan. So I appreciate that, and everyone's participation today and joining us. And I wonder, Carol, if we can put our email back up, the page with our email address, because if you have more questions, you can always find 100% Athens on Facebook. But you can also email us directly, more questions, more ideas, groups that you think we should present to, in anything. We would love to hear from you about anything. And I know there were some other specific questions that we didn't get to today. One specifically about solar from, was it from Claude Lett? So Claude, if you could email us, I have some answers for you that I can talk to you about for your specific questions. But anyway, I just want to thank everybody again, and thank Bailey and Matt and Ovita and Mike for joining us also, and most especially thank the community members and the Citizen Advisory Board participants and the commissioners who showed up on this call. I'm thrilled to have had it. So.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody unmute and tell us goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Ovita out. Ovita out.
Thank you, Vita.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye, Enrique.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Happy Sunday.
Great.
Bye, thanks.
Stop sharing. Okay. End meeting. Who's all done? They're all going away. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Mute. Hola, Dan.
Hola.
I forgot to thank you.
Oh, yes.
I had to